right, welcome everybody to the Homerun Presales Webinar Series. My name is Brian Lewis. I'm co-founder and CRO of Homerun Presales. If you're not already familiar with Homerun, we are the presales workspace that gets high-performing teams through their day with one place to track, manage, organize, and inform all of your presales efforts. And today I'm very excited to be presenting with Homerun customer Jerri Levison, who's the Senior Director of Enterprise Sales Engineering at Samsara. Jerri, welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Excellent. And today's topic is how pre-sales leaders earn their seat at the sales forecast table. And I suppose more generally, how pre-sales teams earn their seat at the sales forecast table. So to get us started, this is a meme I posted maybe a year ago or so. Pre-sales teams have data that no one else has, but everyone wants. And if we work our way around the different mugs, if you think about, let's say, your marketing team, they want to know what defines good versus bad technical fits to guide our lead gen efforts, right? Pre-sales teams, we have that data. We know what defines good versus bad technical fits. Your product team, they want to know what are the product gaps that are losing us deals so we can prioritize the roadmap. Product managers are desperate for real data. Pre-sales teams, you have deals, you have dollars, you know those gaps that are causing problems. We can share that over with our product teams. Your post-sales team, they want to know everything, right? They're going to tell you, tell me everything you did during the entire technical sales cycle so we can come up to speed and deliver an amazing customer onboarding experience. We want it all. And for a lot of organizations right now, it's all about retention, retention, retention. This is one of the ways you're going to set your organizations up for success. And your C-suite, they want to know, how can we close more deals faster to hit our revenue targets and growth goals, right? They're reporting up into their board. They need this information to achieve their own goals. You have valuable data for the C-suite. And we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the ways pre-sales teams and specifically some companies are getting that C-suite visibility. And finally, and I saved this one for last because it's the lead into today's topic, the sales team. Your sales team wants to know what are the technical details that are putting deals at risk so we can strategize before we lose them, and this is the real lead into today's topic, and forecast more accurately, right? So all of this today's presentation is around the idea that pre-sales teams have data, and by sharing it, you can make a real impact on the organization. So to talk about the sales forecasting process, I'm going to turn it over to Jerri so she can lead us through the life cycle of an opportunity, the level of effort, and really what a forecasting process looks like and how the pre-sales team engages in it. So Jerri, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. So first off, let's just level set and start with a simplified view of an opportunity. So many companies, in fact, may have sales stages broken out into 10 or more different stages within their own instance of Salesforce, as an example. We're going to first start with talking about pre-evaluation, then we'll talk about evaluation and post-evaluation. We're just going to have a simplified view of what your stages might be in Salesforce. So next slide. So when we look at pre-evaluation, these are typically activities that might take place during that pre-evaluation. The goal here being to really get the customer interested in actually evaluating your solution. But before you can do that, you really need to have enough of an understanding of what their problem is. And you'll typically do that through some sort of discovery process. You're also seeking to understand, hey, do they have budget and what is their timeline for purchase? And all of those types of things, all of that to get them interested into starting an actual evaluation. So so getting into the actual evaluation, typically you're interested in getting to the technical win. So you've started this evaluation, you really need to understand how the customer is going to evaluate your solution. You need to understand what's important to them before they're actually going to decide to purchase. So capturing things like success criteria is super important. And I want to be clear that that success criteria is from the customer's perspective, not necessarily the company's perspective or your perspective, but really from the customer's perspective. So now let's talk about post-evaluation. So in post-evaluation, presumably we've gotten to that technical win, and all attention now is focused on getting to the deal win. In some companies, an SE may only have responsibility for doing things like demos and then the actual evaluation, and then they may be done with that. In other organizations, you may have SEs that are involved in every single step up, all the way up to getting the purchase order before they move on. And yet in some other organizations, they may just be involved in even a smaller aspect of that. So just again here, the goal of the pre-evaluation, you want to get to the evaluation. The goal for the evaluation stage is you want to get that technical win, because that's going to help you increase your confidence and your chance of getting to the deal win. And the post-evaluation is all about getting to the deal win. Next slide. So now let's talk about the level of effort for both a sales engineer and an application engineer. So probably not too surprising to anyone on the call that the highest engagement and effort for the sales engineer is actually during the evaluation stage. For the account exec, it's typically during that pre-evaluation stage and also during that post-evaluation stage as well. Next slide. So now that we've discussed a little bit about the high-level stages of an opportunity and where the focus is at for both an SE and an AE, let's spend a little bit of time understanding the sales focus for updating forecast during each of these stages. So typically during the pre-evaluation stage, the focus is really about building out the top of the pipeline funnel. So these are opportunities that are typically very early stage, and they're not committed in any kind of company forecast. So things like, hey, you're just wanting to build out the pipeline, and a lot of companies may have measures like the pipeline size should be 3x the size of the ACV or the quota perhaps that you're actually going to assign to a given sales exec and sales engineer. But it's not generally considered very accurate at this stage. Next slide. So now when you look at the evaluation stage, you're getting more and more confidence about our ability to win the deal. We may be predicting it to close in the current quarter, or maybe it's in the next quarter. So typically things there is the opportunity is being evaluated with the SE. The AE may still have some engagement or a lot of engagement, but you're building your confidence on your way to get that technical win. Let's look at the next stage, the post-evaluation stage. So in this stage, the forecast becomes very accurate, a lot more committed. So companies will have a concept of, hey, this is now committed. We're sure that we're going to get this deal. We think we know exactly when it's going to close. We're quite confident in the amount for the opportunity, and we actually have the technical win. So again, confidence increasing quite a bit. So next slide. So here again, as you go across these stages, it's all about increasing confidence and getting to a deal win. So you can see that all the way, once you get to the post-evaluation stage, boy, the confidence is actually the highest at that point. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Brian, and he's going to talk about the SE's knowledge that they gain as we go through these stages together with the account exec.
Yep, thanks, Jerri. So if we go through the pre-evaluation part, right, this is the first discovery calls, as Jerri mentioned. These are our first demos, maybe second demos that we're giving to a new buying team. As an SE, we are trained to listen for things like the customer use cases, right? What are they actually trying to do? What are their priorities? Whether that's within their team, within their organization, their C-suite's priorities, customer pain, right? Why are they trying to solve these problems? And as every SE, SC, SA knows these days, convert that pain into the value that you might be able to deliver to that potential customer. You're also learning about the personalities of the buying team, right? Are they a very engaged team? Are there certain people that are more engaged than others? Are certain people standoffish? Are they already putting up roadblocks and barriers? Or are they actually trying to work with you on finding the right solution and move towards a conclusion? You're also learning about competitive intel, right? First of all, are we up against a competitor? Which competitors? You're going to hear that kind of information. Is the buying team mentioning anything about those competitors? Have they used them in the past? Have they had good experiences or bad experiences? Maybe something about pricing or capabilities that they saw or liked, right? That kind of information is going to be important as we move through. You're also starting to get a sense of the technical fit. You're going to have some early concerns, maybe even some blockers. And by blocker, we mean you're hearing something about the technical fit that makes them not a good customer or not able to be a customer for some reason. And you may still need to work through and figure that out, but you do have that early sense of that. And collectively, as an SE, this is giving you that early sense of what it's going to take to win, right? The wheels are already starting to spin for you. And this is information that's going to go into those, the pipeline coverage and those very early deal reviews. You also start to have an early sense of whether we can win this at all, right? If you've identified a technical blocker already, this is information that you're bringing up into your pre-sales management and ultimately the sales leadership as well about whether this is a deal that should really progress, or more importantly, from a pre-sales perspective, is this an opportunity that we really want to spend a lot of time on, right? That's that early guidance on the top of the funnel and the early pipeline. As you move into that evaluation stage, that, whether it's custom demos or trials or proof of concepts or proof of values or hands-on workshops or whatever your version is of a technical evaluation, you now transition, and as an SC, you're thinking about the solution design. Right? We know the use cases and priorities and pain and value and everything else. What's the solution that we're putting together? Our products, our different modules, some configuration options. You've got that design in mind. Because we're in a technical evaluation now, we are also thinking about success criteria. How do we get through the evaluation to get that technical win? What do we need to show or prove or demonstrate to this buying team? And this should be an engaged conversation. This is not one way. We should be asking the buying team, how do we prove success here, that we are the right vendor? Let's get that list down so that we can start to work through it. And that ultimately goes into something that's called an evaluation plan. This is going to be your step-by-step guide for internal processes. For example, how do we set up or spin up a new POC environment, things like that, all the way into what are the explicit use cases, success, test cases, and success criteria. And you're going to want to share that plan out with the buying team so you can jointly and digitally track progress through it. And so part of that SE knowledge now is not just the plan, but also the progress, where we're at, the status, how things are going, and are there any blockers? Are we stuck on some step? We can't spin up an environment or integrate a certain way? Or do we have a failing test case or use case that's going to cause a problem in this technical evaluation and therefore in this deal? You also are learning about the customer sentiment. How are they feeling this is going, right? You're having engaged conversations with your buying team because you're reviewing that shared evaluation plan in most cases. How are they thinking it's going? You're going to have a sense of that. And very importantly, the SE sentiment. You as an SE or your SE team members, they're going to have a feeling of how this is going as well. And this is going to come up a little bit later when we talk about some of the other customer case studies around this. But your SEs are going to know, I'm encouraged, this is going well, or I'm concerned, it's not going so well, and they'll know the reasons why. Part of those reasons are technical fit. Now that you are deep into this technical evaluation, right, with an environment or a custom demo, you're going to start to identify the technical fit blockers. Are there some things that you've learning now that you are in the weeds, as they say, that are going to block this customer from being able to use your technology and move forward? Obviously, that's critical information. Related, but a little bit different, are there any feature requests that are coming in from the buying team or product gaps that you've identified that are also blockers to buy? Is there some missing capability that is critical that your buying team says, I can't move forward and buy from you, or that they can't move forward and buy from you? This is going to be one of the most serious types of SE knowledge that is going to surface up. And all of this is going to flow into the forecast guidance and the forecast accuracy. If you make it through the technical evaluation and you've gotten that technical win, The post-evaluation, you still have a very valuable SE knowledge. The feature requests that you might have been learning along the way, there's other types beyond blockers. There are futures. Future means that a buying team or a customer is able to buy today and move forward with you, but they do need it to be successful in the future. Now, because almost every company is so focused on retention and reducing churn, you need to be capturing and communicating those future feature requests and product gaps to your product team. Otherwise, you've just introduced churn risk. That new customer at some point when they come close to renewal is going to say, hey, I needed that. We haven't been able to be successful because you haven't delivered it yet. And the nice to haves. As your SE team is going to hear that, oh, it'd be nice if your product did this, nice if your product did that. We often dismiss that because it's not critical to winning or losing the deal. But you can lose deals and you can lose renewals by death by 1,000 nice to have. So it is important information to capture and share. You'll also know things about other customer needs, right? You've now spent a lot of time with this buying team. Are there opportunities for expansions or upsell or cross-sell? Your post-sales team is going to want to know that information so they can engage with that buying team, or possibly even augment the deal or increase the deal size right now by going into those other opportunities. The deployment timeline becomes important because, again, we're about to close a contract. Your implementation teams are going to need to know what's going to be required. And finally, not every company does this, but it is a best practice for pre-sales teams that your SEs have knowledge that should go directly into the statement of works, the SOWs that are going to get signed as part of those contracts in terms of scope. What is in scope for this implementation and what is explicitly out of scope? And are there any kind of gotchas, meaning something that you know about that could cause problems or frictions during implementation, or as a customer, you want to make sure that those things are noted as well, so that your customers or soon-to-be customers have an opportunity to review that SOW, the scope, and make sure they're comfortable with what they're about to get. And ultimately, that's going to lead into that future success. And all those renewals and all those upsells and cross-sells are also going to make their way into future sales forecasts. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jerri so she can talk more about what they've been doing and the great work they've been doing over at Samsara.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks a lot. So just to give an example of what we're doing across the various levels of SEs and sales leaders tied into these stages. So it's starting from the bottom, the SE as an individual contributor working together with the account exec, they would be updating the state of opportunities of an active trial in Homerun. So we are actively using Homerun. So they would be updating things like customer sentiment, success criteria. Have we met the success criteria? Updating if we've actually achieved the technical win, and then adding notes and stuff in there. There's also competitive information and checking if, hey, do we have a blocker attached to that particular opportunity? So they're updating all kinds of information into Homerun regarding the state of that opportunity and that actual trial. So next, that information is used by their managers to roll up and look at the total number of trials that might be completing in the quarter or in the next quarter. And typically, we're going to be looking at that by ACV size, what's going to close, what new trials came in the quarter, what trials are going to complete by ACV. And we can do that across all different regions. And so they'll be having conversations with the regional sales directors for which they're tied to and they support. And then to take that up even to the next level, typically, us, just like lots of other companies, we are having weekly forecast calls. And so at that level, the director is actually able to communicate and talk about things like any risks to those opportunities. When we look at things like customer sentiment, we'll be able to validate, yeah, that opportunity is going to close. We are going to complete that trial in the quarter. Here's the trial close date. It's looking really good. We have the confidence that we've gotten that technical win, perhaps, and having those conversations at that forecast call. So that is super helpful because typically the senior vice president of our sales, they're looking at tools like Clary that are sitting on top of Salesforce, and they're wanting to get the confidence for what's actually going to close in that quarter and potentially even the further quarter outs. And so they are going to be looking for that SE voice to weigh in as to what is the state of that opportunity? How is the customer feeling about it? Have we gotten the technical win? All as a means to increase the confidence and accuracy of the forecast. So now let me go to the next slide, Brian. So just to get a little bit more tactical, what does that look like in terms of metrics? So looking at some of the metrics that we pull out of Homerun, we've used the charts and dashboard features in there of pulling data out of there. We're looking at all active opportunities in an active trial stage by region. That's one of the reports that we find super useful. Following that are all trials completing in the quarter and new trials created in the quarter. So if you think about that early funnel into the pipeline, the pre-evaluation into evaluation, that's data that we'll get out of those stage changes. Couple that with, we want to know how many tech wins did we actually achieve in the quarter, and then lastly, kind of what is the sentiment for those opportunities. And so we'll take a look at all of those things and start to bubble that information up and help to impact the sales forecast accuracy. One thing that I want to highlight is that these two things that I've starred, the all trials completing in the current quarter and the new trials created in the quarter, those were two metrics that we've been using for recent spiffs. And these have been spiffs that have been targeted for SEs only. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. So looking at our SE only spiff program, I'm super excited about this. This was a spiff for which the sales leaders came up with the idea for this spiff. So they are recognizing that SEs have an active voice in the forecast accuracy, and they're wanting to say, hey, if we incentivize SEs to help progress opportunities from two areas, both into a trial, but if you're in a trial, let's progress it out of the trial to the next stage. So they're looking for the SEs to help promote and progress those opportunities through the pipeline. And doing so, we had a spiff for this. We awarded money to the top 5 SEs who had the largest count of opportunities progressed over a certain ACV size. So we measured this in a 7-week period. And in that time, we had 58 large enterprise opportunities that met the criteria where we were able to award the top 5 SEs based on this specific spiff. This did a couple things. It helped us achieve our current quarter goals for forecast, but it also set up the future, the follow-on quarter goals for us having a higher confidence that we were actually going to hit our numbers in the follow-on quarter. So now let me turn it back over to Brian to give you more examples of other companies.
Yeah, I love the idea of the SE spiff program, and that Samsara and the sales leadership invested in this, because a lot of the talk within the pre-sales community is how we're often reactive to the opportunities, or quote unquote sales support or things like that. But it's a real recognition that kind of the modern SE can be a proactive partner to move deals forward, right? And working collaboratively with their AEs to do this. And so we always talk about how a pre-sales team can close more deals and close them faster. And by SEs recognizing that I have a role to play in moving deals forward, and in this case, being incentivized to do so, gets that ingrained into the SEs' minds of, yeah, I can help move this stuff forward. This is actually important to our organization. And
yeah,
who doesn't like a spiff as well?
yeah, it was super. I think it was super exciting for us, especially, I think, given the fact that the sales team took the spiff money out of their budget. So this was financed out of a sales budget. As most sales teams have a certain amount of dollars that they can, generate spiffs. And the fact that they chose to use their funds for an SE only spiff, I think, was fantastic. One other thing that I would share is that this spiff was seen as so successful that we are running it again. So we are now in our second quarter of an SE only spiff, which is super exciting for the SEs. I hope that we can continue to do this every quarter, quite frankly. I think it's fantastic for our team. And then lastly, another interesting thing is that the sales team is also running an AE spiff only, but they're using data out of Homerun to validate what the AEs are stating as terms of opportunities being in trials. So I thought that was actually pretty fascinating. It just shows how far we've come for the SE team to actually have a voice at that sales forecast table that our data that we are keeping track of is being used to validate an AE spiff only. So yeah, super exciting times for us.
Yeah, for sure. And once again, showing how important that pre-sales data is, going back to the very beginning, pre-sales teams have data that everyone wants, but nobody has. And so being able to contribute that opens up some new possibilities around the organization, like now the new AE spiff as well.
Correct. Yeah.
So a couple of other examples, in addition to, of course, Jerri, the great work that you all have done at Samsara. So in talking with Scott Reeder, who's the director of sales engineering over at ReliaQuest, another home run customer, they're now using, when we talk about the SE knowledge, they're using their SE sentiment along with their POV, so proof of value evaluation plan blockers, right, that define step-by-step guide and any blockers where they're stuck in those plans, as well as the feature request and product gap blockers, right? So that trio of SE sentiment, evaluation plan blockers, and feature blockers in their deal reviews with their sales leadership. And kind of the today version, and they're relatively, a few months in with Homerun, but one of the early success stories that Scott told me about was that in their setup where they're at the director of sales engineering, there's also a director of sales, so they have kind of peer-to-peer relationships. They were reviewing some of their deals that were in commit, and for the first time, Scott and the team had pre-sales data to work with, and they had identified a $350,000 deal that was in commit, but Scott, had Homerun open and said, well, we know it can't be in commit. We have some pre-sales warning signs coming from our SE team. And after some discussion, they decided to pull that deal out of commit, which for any of you who've been part of sales forecasting processes, that's a really big deal because you have to go find another $350,000 to plug that hole. So it was painful, but ultimately the right move, because at the end of the day, it's better than blowing the forecast, right, and just missing it. So they're catching some of these deals late because they finally have some data. But really, if we pull, what they're trying to do for the future now is use that newfound pre-sales data earlier in the review cycle. So not just in those later stages, but back into that evaluation and sometimes even kind of that almost pre-evaluation stage, because ReliaQuest has this concept of, they call it hat in the ring, which is effectively the sales team saying, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and this deal is going to close. It's going to go into forecast or commit. And they're using that pre-sales data now to say, well, should the hat go in the ring? Or do we have some of these, a concern sentiment or some blockers or concerns coming from the pre-sales team that should not allow us to do that? We should not throw our hat in the ring. So kind of moving that pre-sales data earlier. And also, since we talked about the interaction with, the other teams, their C-suite, they're getting great visibility now by their C-suite. The ReliaQuest CRO is asking Scott and Miles and the rest of the team for more metrics related to SE sentiment and different types of POVs now that they understand the value that this data is coming in. And there's a question coming in the Q&A around how does the SE sentiment outcome impact the relationship between sales engineering and sales? And if you have to pull something out, could this be rough? Yeah, certainly there's a level of context or conversation that this should be happening, right? And it really starts off with, if an AE is feeling encouraged about a deal, but the SE is not, or is concerned or has these technical blockers, the conversation really should start SE to AE. Hey, we're in this together. Neither one of us want to see a deal not close or not close on time. It doesn't look good for either of us. So do we really want to put this forward, right? That's new for a lot of SEs. They're not used to thinking that way. If there's not still a discontinuity there, then it goes up a level, right? SE manager to sales manager, and ultimately up to the director level like Scott, where there's escalated levels of conversation. Now, in this case, they had to pull it out because they had a conversation. Scott able to say, these are the warning signs. Do we really want to leave it and commit? And the sales leader ultimately, who's responsible for it, pulls it. So there's always going to be different levels of conversation so that nobody feels like they're getting blindsided by something or called out in a meeting, right? It's always done at the appropriate time and the appropriate level. Moving on to Starburst. So this is another home run customer, and a conversation with Brian Lewis, who's their VP of Pre-Sales Engineering for Americas and APJ. They have two kind of key notes fields that they use in their deal reviews inside of Homerun. Their SA notes and also their SA manager notes, right? How's the SA feeling about it and what are they saying? And also the manager has an opinion. And that's additional information that's now brought together to help guide the deal reviews. And in a variation on a theme like ReliaQuest, they're using the SA sentiment and also that technical blockers to once again guide the sales forecasts. Now, for them, and similar to Jerri, what you mentioned at Samsara, the sales team's looking at Clary to get their visibility. The pre-sales team is looking at Homerun. Now, data's flowing back and forth, that's fine. And so the today version is when they do their deal reviews and their forecast calls, they're looking at if a deal's already in forecast or commit, they're looking at Homerun and saying, hey, is the SA sentiment concerned? Are there any technical blockers we should know about? So once again, because this is relatively new for them, they're catching stuff in the later stages of their forecasts and having a real conversation about what they want to do. And their future state that they're moving towards, once again, is pulling that pre-sales data earlier into the process to help guide whether a deal should really be moved into those forecast categories, right? And by doing that, you're going to prevent the pain later on of having to pull something out of commit. It's going to increase your accuracy and better conversations. And ultimately, this is pre-sales and sales working together to help guide the sales forecast narrative and increase that accuracy. Because that sales forecast, of course, is being used by senior leadership in the C-suite to make cash flow planning decisions and headcount planning and strategic investment decisions. The forecast is that important. And also a nod in terms of that C-suite visibility, the Starburst CEO is now asking Brian and the team for more pre-sales insights now that he's seen the impact that the basics, the quote unquote basics can have, right? So it's like a journey that they are going on here. And a final example is Mike over at AppUX. Now they've done some really innovative things when it comes to their pre-sales data. They've been a customer for a long time now. And Mike talks a lot about the idea of pre-forecast leading indicators, right? What kind of pre-sales data are they getting that is again, well, pre-sales forecast leading indicator. They're a very POC heavy company, just given the kind of cybersecurity nature of what they do. And for them, they monitor the number of POCs started on a weekly basis against quarterly targets. So they actually have company targets by quarter for the number of POCs because they know it's a proxy for deals that are moving through to later stage and ultimately to closing. And that metric and that tracking has visibility up to their company CEO. It's that important for them. They're also, I think, which is interesting, is they're tracking deals that they've gotten a technical win, but have not yet closed the deal. And here they're trying to look at deals that was, they call it stalled pipeline. Time kills all deals. We already did all the heavy work, right? All the investment to get the lead, to convert it to an opportunity, all the way through a time-intensive POC. We got the technical win. We just need to get paperwork signed. What's going on in those deals? We should be monitoring those and pushing those really hard. And also, they're just, one interesting thing is they're looking at more use case-based demos and using their pre-sales data to say, can we close deals or certain types of deals without ever doing a POC, which for them is something that would be very novel to not do the POC. Now, from a sales forecast perspective, they've actually taken some of Homerun's data, specifically the pre-sales stage, and they worked with the Clary team to update the predictive model in Clary, which is directly doing their sales forecasting, which I love to see the actual use of data directly into the predictive models in Clary. Very innovative, forward-thinking kind of work that Mike's doing with their teams. And also, and this is, I see this as this has become an emerging trend, if you will, but utilizing one of the metrics, the time from technical win to deal win. And it's, again, kind of related to the stalled pipeline, but a little bit differently. If we know that it typically takes 45 more days after we get a technical window when we close the deal, or whatever the timing is, that can be used to create a pre-sales proxy for a deal close date or opportunity close date, right? Your sales rep is saying this is when it's going to close. But if I have a POC that's supposed to end at the end of April, and I've got 45 more days, that puts my kind of the expected close date into June based on when the POC is going to end. Is that different than what our sales rep has? Is it a different month or a different quarter? So we're not saying it's going to, yes, or it's going to change whether or not it's going to close, but when it's going to close, which is a key part of that sales forecasting. And finally, and just a nod towards sharing data with the other teams, Mike's also now leading the post-sales team as well. And so they're leveraging that, what they call the now centralized pre-sales data in Homerun, the tell me everything we did during the pre-sales process as part of that handoff and really transition from pre-sales into post-sales to set those customers up for success and their teams up for success. So all three of these, ReliaQuest, Starburst, AppViewX, and even, Jerri, the work you talked about at Samsara, they're all variations on a theme of using that pre-sales data later stage when they first get it, and then bringing it earlier into the funnel for the deal reviews. So to close us out, Jerri, do you want to close us out on the SE journey?
Yeah, so hopefully you can see how in these examples, capturing the SE's insights during the course of an overall evaluation of an opportunity is a great leading indicator during sales forecast calls for predicting if we're going to actually get the deal win, and if so, by when. And we're finding that the sales team definitely want to hear the SE voice. So we've come on this journey where we've had no voice to capturing and presenting these insights to now really firmly having a seat at that forecast table. So definitely has been a super exciting journey for me. Also, Brian, I just want to answer one of the questions I see in the Q&A. There was a question on what was the dollar amount of the SPIF? The dollar amount of the SPIF was $5,000 for each of those top SEs. So not insignificant. Definitely was a super, super exciting SPIF.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, as we think about the no voice to the seat at the table,
Yep.
I love that it's not just the sales team and the sales leadership that are, of course, getting value out of this, but some of those examples of that C-suite, right? CROs, CEOs, which is we don't really think of caring about pre-sales data, but recognizing that is information that I didn't have, and now that you've shared it with me, I want more. I see value in that, and ultimately that data is the path towards getting, I think, that seat at not just the sales forecast table, but really that impact table, that leadership table, that executive table, fill in the blank. There's a lot of different tables that we can sit at, but that data ultimately is how we get there.
Yeah, I think first, I think you make a really great point, because I think where we started our journey with using Homerun, and we're a year into using it at this point, it was more so focused on the sales aspect and the forecast piece. We are now using that data. I think way back in your very first slide, it's the product team wanting to see that data and understanding, hey, where have we caught product gaps, feature blockers and stuff. And so it is starting to spiral into lots of other teams that are now also looking for that SE insight. And by us keeping those insights up to date in the tool, it's really serving us well throughout many different departments, not just the sales team at this point.
Yeah. And Jerri, I see another question in the Q&A around what is the general or best practice for SE variable pay option? Is it company quarterly targets, individual win ratios, et cetera? Is there anything that you can share about what you do at Samsara in terms of variable comp, or is there a variable comp other than the SPIF?
Yeah, so we're basically on 70-30 plans, where 70% is base salary for SEs and the other 30% is variable. That is directly tied to the quota or the sales team for which that SE is aligned to. So that is how we do it here. So the SE definitely has a fair amount of skin in the game for progressing opportunities through that pipeline, for closing opportunities, and they are partnered tightly with their account exec and sales team.
All right, excellent. Well, to close us out then, as we leave today talking about the sales forecasting process and getting a seat at that table, we kind of want everybody to think about how your pre-sales data can generate that cross-functional value around the organization. So think about the data you have, the data that's being captured in different places. Share that data out with your various teams, go out and make those different impacts on those teams, because ultimately, again, that's going to help you earn the seat at all of these different tables. If you are interested in how you too can earn that seat at the sales forecast table and get all that great SE knowledge and share it out with those other teams, definitely ask you to check out Homerun. You can request a demo off our website or just get in touch directly with me. Happy to get you set up and have a chat. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
My pleasure for joining. Thanks.